Are Russian forces holding back or just terrible at this? Here's the situation as of December 2025. Russia controls roughly 20% of Ukraine, about 115,000 square kilometers. They're advancing, but at a crawl. We're talking meters per day, not miles. While peace talks find their way into the news cycle each week, the war grinds on. If you dare to put yourself in Russia's shoes to try and understand its perspective, imagine invading your neighbor's house after a decades-old grudge while half your equipment breaks down in their driveway. Russians and Ukrainians share deep historical and cultural ties. Same Slavic roots, intertwined languages, family connections that cross borders. Does that create hesitation? Maybe. But the data shows Russia isn't holding back. They're pushing hard and absorbing staggering losses. The real issue isn't motivation, it's competence, logistics, and the fact that Ukraine keeps punching above its weight class. As of early December 2025, Russia occupies approximately 20% of Ukraine. In November alone, Russian forces captured about 505 square kilometers, almost double October's gains. Key battlegrounds include Pokrovsk, areas around Siversk, and continued pressure in Donetsk and Luhansk. Russian forces conducted nearly 6,000 assault operations in November 2025, the highest monthly figure of the year. But here's the catch. 40% of their gains came in just one sector near Huliapol. They're concentrating massive force in small areas and getting minimal return. Meanwhile, Russia continues massive deep strike campaigns. On December 6th, they launched one of the war's largest aerial assaults. 653 drones and 51 missiles targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure. 8 people were wounded, power was cut to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, and cities across Ukraine went dark. It's less blitzkrieg, more grindkrieg, with blackouts as intermissions. Remember that 40-mile convoy outside Kyiv? Russia's initial offensive looked fast on paper. Rapid advances toward the capital, attempts to decapitate Ukrainian leadership, but it was a catastrophic failure in execution. Logistics collapsed with no fuel and no food, all on single-lane roads. Elite VDV paratroopers were slaughtered at Hostomel Airport. The entire northern offensive collapsed by April 2022. It was like trying to parallel park a 40-mile convoy while everyone threw Molotovs at you. Fast forward to now, and Russia is still struggling. Despite mobilizing hundreds of thousands of troops, rotation issues persist and equipment shortages continue. Western intelligence estimates suggest casualties in the hundreds of thousands. Russia hasn't achieved air superiority despite having more aircraft. Ukrainian air defenses, including Western-supplied systems like Patriot and NASAMS, keep Russian jets flying cautiously. When Russian aircraft do operate, they're often launching standoff weapons from inside Russian airspace rather than risking close air support. The vaunted Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopters, initially feared as tank killers with their Viker anti-tank missiles, have been shot down in significant numbers. Open source trackers suggest Russia has lost over 50 K-52s since the war began. That's over $800 million in helicopters alone. Russian fighters like the Su-35 multi-role fighter and Su-34 fighter bomber conduct strikes, but they're vulnerable. Ukraine has successfully downed multiple advanced Russian aircraft using systems like the Patriot. Even Russia's limited use of Su-57 stealth fighters, their most advanced platform, hasn't changed the equation. These aircraft operate sparingly and primarily fire missiles from safe distances. When one was reportedly damaged by a Ukrainian drone strike at an airfield deep inside Russia, it became clear that nowhere is truly safe. Ukrainian naval drones have devastated Russia's Black Sea fleet. Ukraine has sunk or severely damaged over 30 Russian vessels, including the flagship Moskva cruiser, multiple Rapucha-class landing ships, the submarine Rostov-on-Don, and numerous patrol boats. The Sevastopol naval base, once Russia's crown jewel in Crimea, is now under constant threat. The Moskva sinking in April 2022 was particularly embarrassing. A Soviet-era cruiser taken out by Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles. Landing ships meant to support amphibious operations have been picked off in port. The submarine Rostov-on-Don was hit while in dry dock at Sevastopol in September 2023. Ukraine, a country without a traditional navy, has effectively pushed the Russian Black Sea Fleet out of western Crimean waters, using anti-ship missiles, modified naval drones, and long-range strikes. It's naval warfare reimagined on a budget. Ukrainian FPV racing drones, modified with explosives, hunt Russian armor for a few $100s per unit, destroying vehicles worth millions. The battlefield is saturated with cheap, lethal technology that's rewriting military doctrine in real time. Russia counters with Iranian-supplied Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, which Russia calls Jiran-2. These GPS-guided loitering munitions cost around $20,000 to $50,000 each and have a range of up to 2,500 kilometers. Russia has established domestic production in Yelabuga, aiming to produce 6,000 units by mid-2025. They launch them in swarms, often hundreds per night, to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses. On July 9, 2025, Russia launched a record 728 Shahed-type drones in a single assault. The economics are brutal. Each Shahed costs $20,000 to $50,000, while the missiles used to shoot them down cost $400,000 to $1.2 million. Russia is winning the cost imposition game, forcing Ukraine to expend expensive interceptors on cheap targets. But Ukraine has adapted. By July 2025, Ukrainian forces were shooting down 9 out of 10 Shaheds using their own interceptor drones, dramatically reducing costs. Electronic warfare jamming has also increased effectiveness, causing many drones to miss their targets entirely. In one of the war's strangest developments, North Korea confirmed in April 2025 that it sent approximately 12,000 troops to Russia, primarily to help recapture the Kursk region. These soldiers, many from North Korea's elite Storm Corps, were transported to Vladivostok, given Russian uniforms and fake identities, then deployed to combat zones. The results have been catastrophic. Initial reports suggested North Korean forces suffered 2,000 to 4,000 killed or wounded by early 2025. Lacking armored vehicles, unfamiliar with drone warfare, and operating in unfamiliar terrain, North Korean troops became easy targets for Ukrainian artillery and FPV drones. By January 2025, North Korean units had been pulled from the front lines after suffering major casualties, though reports suggest they have since returned in smaller numbers. For North Korea, the deployment provides economic assistance, military technology transfers, and battlefield experience. Kim Jong-un has celebrated the deployment publicly, constructing memorial museums honoring fallen soldiers. For Russia, North Korean manpower helps offset personnel losses, though their effectiveness remains questionable. For the international community, it represents dangerous escalation, expanding the conflict beyond Europe and creating a precedent for authoritarian states to pool military resources. In late 2025, high-stakes talks picked up momentum. U.S. and Russian officials met in Moscow for extended discussions about ending the war. The conversations were described as constructive, but no breakthroughs occurred. The core problem is territory. Russia wants to keep Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, the regions it illegally annexed. Ukraine, backed by the EU and US, refuses to cede sovereign territory. President Trump has indicated he wants a quick resolution and suggested cutting aid if Ukraine doesn't negotiate. But European allies have pledged continued support regardless. The European position is firm. No territorial concessions that reward aggression. The U.S. is trying to balance pressure on both sides, pushing Ukraine toward talks while simultaneously threatening Russia with more weapons deliveries if they don't engage seriously. Ukraine wants security guarantees that actually mean something. They're pushing for NATO membership or, at minimum, bilateral defense agreements with major Western powers. Zelensky has been clear. Without ironclad security, any peace deal is just a timeout before Russia tries again. Russia insists on Ukrainian neutrality and wants Western sanctions lifted. Putin has publicly stated he's willing to continue military operations to secure his objectives in Donbass if talks fail. So we have a stalemate within a stalemate. Fighting continues while everyone negotiates positions they know the other side won't accept. Western support is the reason Ukraine still exists as an independent state. Without it, this war would have ended in 2022 with Russian tanks in Kiev. Javelin and NLAW anti-tank missiles turned Russian armor into scrap metal during the early war. HIMARS rocket systems allowed Ukraine to strike Russian logistics hubs, ammunition depots, and command posts deep behind enemy lines, forcing Russia to disperse supplies and slow their offensive tempo. Air defense systems like Patriot, NASAMS, and IRIS-T created an increasingly lethal environment for Russian aircraft and missiles. As of late 2025, Western military aid to Ukraine totals well over $100 billion, with the U.S. contributing the largest share. Europe has committed additional funding through 2025 and beyond. The equipment matters, but so does the intelligence. Western satellite reconnaissance, signals intelligence, and real-time targeting data have been game changers. Ukraine knows where Russian forces are concentrating before attacks happen. It's like playing poker when you can see the other guy's cards. Beyond weapons, Western nations are literally keeping Ukraine's government running. Budget support, humanitarian aid, and reconstruction funds ensure the state doesn't collapse economically. Russia hoped sanctions and war exhaustion would break Ukraine's will. Instead, Western backing has kept them in the fight. This war has become a showcase for modern attrition warfare. Fortifications dominate. Both sides have dug extensive trench networks that would make World War I generals nod in recognition. Electronic warfare is everywhere, jamming GPS signals, disrupting drones, and blinding reconnaissance. Artillery still does the heavy killing, but precision matters now. Drones have changed everything. Cheap quadcopters provide real-time battlefield awareness. Modified FPV drones act as loitering munitions. Ukraine deploys everything from commercial DJI Mavics for reconnaissance to converted racing drones rigged with anti-tank grenades. We're watching the future of warfare in real time, and it's grinding, attritional, and deeply unglamorous. The lessons are clear. Expensive platforms are vulnerable to cheap munitions. Air superiority matters, but isn't guaranteed. Logistics wins wars, and motivated defenders with good intelligence are nightmares to dislodge. Russia's advances are real, they're taking ground and applying pressure. But the cost is astronomical. They're trading thousands of soldiers and hundreds of armored vehicles for small towns and open fields. Ukraine's defense remains resilient, not just because of Western weapons, but because they've adapted faster. Diplomacy is active but constrained. No side is ready to concede core demands. Russia won't give back occupied territory without major concessions. Ukraine won't legitimize territorial theft. The West wants peace, but not appeasement. So, is Russia holding back? Absolutely not. They're pushing as hard as their broken logistics and exhausted military will allow. They're firing missiles at civilian infrastructure, sending waves of conscripts into meat grinders, importing North Korean troops, buying Iranian drones, and gambling their economy on outlasting Western support. Ukraine isn't just surviving, they're adapting, innovating, and making Russia pay for every meter. The war's future depends on whether negotiations can bridge unbridgeable gaps or whether both sides are willing to keep bleeding until something breaks. Speed is optional, pain is mandatory, and everyone's running out of patience.